This downturn in confidence that we've seen in September, is this just a blip or the start of more falling confidence?
Well, it's a decline, but it's not a very big one. So I would say, we don't think there is really a turning point now. The reason is that the decline is mostly in manufacturing. True, companies are worried about the trade situation, about the trade war, but the domestic economy, on the other hand, is very stable. Construction is booming, wages are growing. So the overall picture isn't all too bleak.
If the trade war does escalate even further, though, what sort of preparations are we seeing companies make at this point?
Companies are checking their supply chains. Of course, many companies, German companies, have production in the United States. They are affected by Chinese tariffs now. They have production all over the world. So as protectionism proceeds, every company needs its own strategy to adjust, basically producing more in the market countries and closer to the consumers. But of course, changing that in the short term is very difficult. So I guess the hope most companies have, especially the German companies, is that the trade war will focus now on US versus China and not so much on Europe.
Mr. Fuest, I have Sonia Lord from Fidelity on set with me, and she has a question for you as well.
Good morning, Clemens. Just a question in the broader context that obviously 2017 has been extremely strong and probably even too strong if we compare indices like Ifo with the underlying data. And obviously I know that ever since we started 2018 we've had a lot of headlines around protectionism, yet you could argue that we're probably more in a normalization trend than anything else, just because 2017 has been such an outlier to the upside. And if we compare today's level of the Ifo, it's much more in line with what we have seen in 2016-15. So, how can we differentiate between the noise of the kind of the threat of protectionism and the kind of normalization and adjustment process to get some kind of look through what a normalized level should look like?
Well, I guess in terms of protectionism, we haven't seen very many tariffs in Europe-US trade so far. So it's limited to the steel industry so far. What we see in the answers companies give us is growing uncertainty, though. And I guess that's related to the potential of an escalation of the trade war also between Europe and the US, and the Brexit issue, of course. So far, the real impact is not very strong.
The other thing as well, weighing, I guess, on global sentiment, Mr. Fuest, is the sort of sell-off that we've seen in emerging markets. Is there any evidence of this filtering through to manufacturers or other companies in Germany?
This is certainly one of the factors explaining that business sentiment is weak in manufacturing and not so much in the rest of the economy. Again, the impact, for instance, of the Turkish crisis on German exports is not very visible yet, but it will come. I mean, this massive devaluation will have an impact, and the same applies to other emerging economies. So there may be more to come.
What about China? And obviously, when we talk about the trade war, we're mainly focusing on the US and China. Have we seen any sort of weakness for exports demand from China?
I don't think we have. And this US-China trade war has two sides for Europe. One is that, of course, business in China will slow down. But on the other hand, there are opportunities coming up for European companies, also for companies from emerging countries in the US market, because Chinese competitors will have these tariffs and will be weaker. So I don't think there is an impact now or has been any visible impact so far of the US-Chinese trade war on particularly German manufacturers operating in Germany.
The Bundesbank has said the German economy can cope with any repercussions thanks to strong domestic demand and also a buoyant labour market. Would you agree?
well, any repercussions is maybe too much, but it's true that what's driving the German economy at the moment is not so much export growth as it used to be. It's really the domestic economy. It's the construction boom. It's growing wages and growing employment. Employment is at record levels. So that is very solid. The domestic economy is very stable at the moment. It's true.